Media, Madam Speaker, where an old man had removed his clothes in protest because he has not been paid, Madam Speaker. Devolution has brought misery. I'm sorry to say this, Madam Speaker, and pain, and anguish, and gnashing of teeth, Madam Speaker, by many Kenyans who are contractors in our counties. Madam Speaker, for example, in Nandi County, we have close to 1 billion, Madam Speaker, that is on pending bill alone. 1 billion, Madam Speaker, all contractors in Nandi are suffering. And having sat in the Public Accounts Committee, discuss, Madam Speaker. And most of, Madam Speaker, the sad reality is these are young people, Madam Speaker. These are people who took an LSO, an LPO to get financing from a bank, from Credit Society, Madam Speaker, to finance some of these projects, Madam Speaker. And they are young people. They are women. They are people living with disability, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, can you believe there are people who are still being owed by counties from the onset of devolution in 2013, 2014? Madam Speaker, the National Treasury at some point tried to do special audit on pending bills, and even went ahead and threatened counties that if they don't pay the pending bills, they will invoke Article 225 in terms of suspension of funds, Madam Speaker. It is sad. This prompt payment bill, Madam Speaker, because I was building the background, I want to thank Senator Omar, one of my members of public accounts and also a renowned accountant, well-established finance expert, for coming in with this bill as timely. This prompt payment bill. And I think this, and I want to encourage Senator Omar, Madam Speaker, this is one of the things that you will leave an indelible mark in the legislative process and in the history of Parliament of the Republic of Kenya among the Commonwealth countries, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the issue where one issue, there is no written contract for the 90 days, I think that is realistic, Madam Speaker, where the payment, when you supply your things, maybe a company is pre-qualified. Let's assume during COVID era, you supply pharmaceuticals, and there is no written contract. This law has provided that within 90 days, there must be payment upon, of course, the process of completion of works. If it is supply, of course, invoice, among other things, Madam Speaker. And of course, in line with Public Procurement and Disposal Act, the Procurement and Asset Disposal Act, of course, among other procurement, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there is this public procurement, and I think this one PPOA, something that looks into dispute when there is the issue. We have a lot of complaints, Madam Speaker, where award of tender is involved in a lot of recurs. And therefore, they must follow the law in terms of procurement process. Madam Speaker, we have argued this, that why would counties and national government, for example, procure without having the money? Where is the procurement plan? Madam Speaker, in what we call IFIMIS, Information Financial and Management Information System, I think we need to amend the PMF Act, Madam Speaker, and look at the regulations. Because why would I give you supply to supply water to this chamber if I don't have the cash? Why don't we wire it in such a way, and there was a proposal by government then, that you must display the people you have awarded contracts, Madam Speaker. Why don't we tell counties and come up with a law both nationally and at county level, you cannot spend what you do not have? I think, Madam Speaker, you are a senior learned colleague in this profession, and you are aware that you cannot sell what you do not have. For example, there is a principle, Madam Speaker. And therefore, we must bite the bullet and agree that in your procurement plan, in the FMEs, you can only spend when you have money. So if there is a disbursement, I'm aware counties, Madam Speaker, are being owed almost 90 billion in terms of disbursement. And I've seen the equalization fund disbursement, I don't know, county allocation disbursement, Madam Speaker. there is an aspect where 90 billion, for example, when counties receive 90 billion, I don't find it a problem, Madam Speaker. Then they can now implement their procurement plan. Because one of the shocking things is, one of the audit queries is late exchequer releases. Because now the problem, we are heading to the financial year, Madam Speaker, this financial year, the Treasury opens FMEs up to midnight. I don't know why. I've never understood why Treasury behaves like night runners. My neighbors, the night runner is not a bad thing, but I don't know why they operate like night runners in terms of opening and I can see Senator from Homa Bay smiling excitedly when I mentioned the night runners. Or young people call it usiku sako, Madam Speaker. People who have become more active at night. So I don't know why the FMEs is open up to the last day. Then you expect counties to spend, and that is how corruption is. Madam Speaker, you remember the former ambassador said that corruption is budgeted in Kenya. And at that time, he put a figure of 700 billion, Madam Speaker. So we must look. Madam Speaker, when you come to Treasury, there is no money. There is service. There is a pending bill. Where is this money? You go to a county, you get statutory deduction, but no remission. Where is the money? It is corruption, Madam Speaker. And I want at this point to thank our leader, the national leader, His Excellency Dr. William Ruto, Madam Speaker, because he has decided to fight corruption heads on. For example, the cleanup that happened in Kemsa, and I know when cleanup is happening in Kemsa, Madam Speaker, it will assist in ensuring that we get timely disbursement of drugs to our, Madam Speaker. We need cleanup. And therefore, I want to commend the President and ask governors, Madam Speaker, and I would have expected also Senator Ochieng, Senator Eddie Kisheru, to have commended and lauded the President for the efforts of fighting corruption. Because at the end of the day, Madam Speaker, we need to be honest and truthful men. When something good is done, you say it. When something not properly said, you do oversight and you question, Madam Speaker. So these, of course, the goods, private entities, and I think it cuts across both counties and what have you. And then, Madam Speaker, procurers shall pay to supply for delivery of goods works on the due date. And I think, Madam Speaker, that will assist because we are looking about 120 billion. Of course, the supplier is put in position by the supplier, Madam Speaker, because I'm running through to allow colleagues also, Madam Speaker. I think on the issue of interest, I don't know, Madam Speaker, in 2013, 2014, somebody who constructed a cattle dip in Nandi at BQ was 500,000. I don't know whether it makes economic sense to pay that person in 2023 500,000 shillings only. We must make it painful so that people who make decision of procuring don't do it haphazardly for convenience or getting kickbacks. We must put interest rate. Madam Speaker, and the Chair of Education, when you just walked in, Madam Speaker, and then we were having about a petition of teachers. I want to inform the House that those teachers have been paid. I think the process of paying them around, I think 16 billion. I think around 2,500 teachers that had moved to Nakuru High Court in 2008, they have been paid. But does it make sense to pay that teacher of 27,000 shillings now? So the issue of interest and fairness in terms, Madam Speaker, of ensuring that we lamp on the interest. And therefore, I want to laud Senator Omar. He has talked about the interest, all contractual and legal obligations. So if, Madam Speaker, I am supposed to be paid in Siaya County, I'm not saying I should be paid for any service in Siaya County where my brother, the youthful Senator Uhuru Jubilee, for example, I'm being owed by my former colleague and my good friend Senator Orengo. And the law says so long as legal contractual obligations have been made. So if, Madam Speaker, I was to be paid by first and you end up paying me at 50, we should charge an interest so that governors take these things seriously, Madam Speaker. Finally, Madam Speaker, in conclusion, look at the, of course, which is a clause 9, a person wishes to enter into a contract for supply of goods or with national or county shall make to the accounting on pending or to them to a small or micro enterprise. And this is where bottom up. You know, we say during campaign, Madam Speaker, we start down, going up. And that is the intention. And that is why when you see Asla Fund, Madam Speaker, we are trying to tailor-make. Madam Speaker, I heard my colleague saying this. In conclusion, because I just wanted to give a snap, these are straightforward. People are saying we are introducing new taxes in the finance bill. We want to Asla's. Madam Speaker, we must get those taxes. To get those taxes, because I highly doubt if there is somebody who wants 500,000 who is a hustler. If we are requesting only 3%, or even a turnover we have introduced to improve the capital base, Madam Speaker, of 3%, that's 15,000 Kenya shillings. Madam Speaker, what I'm saying, we need money to go and give service to that person in the village, Mamamboga and Boda. I've had people saying here, with all due respect to my senior counsel, saying the people in Nandi, I can confirm to this house, the people in Nandi are supporting the finance bill as is. Because what? We want resources, the taxes. You know, I have attended functions when I'm saying, and I don't know whether our colleagues get similar, even yourself. Mwananchi will stand and say, Senator, we need a road. We need an hospital. We need drugs. We need water. But where is the money that will do that job? It rules on taxation. So we need, Madam Speaker, to be honest with ourselves and have an honest conversation. That for country to move forward, one is pay tax, but ensure that tax works for the people. The president has said as much, that even if he's given 1 shilling, he should protect that 1 shilling to ensure it gives value for your money. And I'm in the same page, Madam Speaker. Number 2, Madam Speaker, I said here, and I receive a lot of point of orders. There was 62 billion in terms of, Madam Speaker, as we talk today. Can I shock you? Almost 1 trillion was given through tax exemptions, tax abandonments, tax evasions. By the previous government, I don't want to say you, because if I say it will run me into problems. If that 1 trillion on tax evasion, tax exemptions was not given, for example, Madam Speaker, a leading bank, and I don't want to say my relationship with that bank, was given a tax exemption of 300 million. So what we should be doing, we should be ensuring we don't give anybody, even a tax exemption. We ensure we collect tax, because President Kibaki, and I don't know whether Senator Eddie Kisher, who is my good friend, I had been born then. When President Kibaki took over in 2002, Madam Speaker, the tax was less than 300 billion. By the time he left office 10 years, because of just saying, kulipa ushuru ni kujitegemea, kulipa ushuru ni he raised up to almost 1 trillion plus. Because of only sealing tax loopholes, tax exemptions, Madam Speaker, not allowing fake things like illegal importation of sugar. You have seen the president and the government has cracked the whip, and people are now in court in the issue of caps, Madam Speaker. I was talking to a friend and he was telling me, he took the sugar, and when he tried to cook the tea, turned into black, and it was supposed to be the normal tea. Madam Speaker, that is how we ensure accountability. For example, somebody somewhere failed. Madam Speaker, even the issue of edible oils. You remember towards the end of last year or mid last year, there was allegations that edible oils had been produced that was not meeting consumption standards. Could it be the reason we have increased cases of cancer, lifestyle diseases? But the bottom line I'm making and submissions I'm making, even as we do this, we must tell these contractors, be paid on time, but pay tax. Senators, pay tax. Madam Speaker, as a senator, I don't have a problem of paying 2,500 meant for the house levy fund, because it's a savings, not a tax. After 7 years, I can still get my money and do whatever I want, or give it to my daughter or son to continue proceeding, Madam Speaker. Because that is the honorable thing to do. Because, Madam Speaker, they say there are 2 things in life, that you assure either death or payment of tax, Madam Speaker. And therefore, I want to appeal that when this is paid, in terms of taxation, we are pushing for this bill to be passed, Madam Speaker, as is. Let these people who are going to be beneficiaries to pay the tax, Madam Speaker, and ensure we keep our economy running. Madam Speaker, with those very, very remarks, allow me to still continue. Madam Speaker, and I heard today women being lauded, and I watched from my bedroom when you were donating in under Kewapa, you went to Langata prisons. This one has shown the women senators not only deal with humanitarian issues, they deal with serious legislative matters only also. So they should be, that should be put on record, Madam Speaker, so that somebody who was listening to Senate thought women in these women senators are only dealing with only giving things to Langata and what have you, Madam Speaker, and paying fines. This one has proven that women can be the trailblazers, and I continue to be the biggest gender to ensure even gender parity, Madam Speaker. I'm looking forward where we'll have Senate is 50-50% representation in the House, both in the National Assembly and the Senate. And I want to ask women senators, I don't have a problem if you tag along me next time and make sure I stand in between all of you so that I feel the warmth and also the comfort and be part of the process of doing good for this community. Thank you, Senator Omar. We wish you well, and I hope this bill comes to fruition. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Cherarke. We can promise you to join us. I don't know about the warmth. Senator Chimera.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute on this very fundamental bill. From the onset, allow me to first of all congratulate and commend Senator Mariam Sheikh Omar for such a wonderful piece of legislation. Also, allow me to pass my sincere apologies for missing out on your visit to Langata Women's Prison. But I'm sure, as my colleague Senator Cherarke has put forth, that was a very fantastic and amazing job. Keep it up to the women colleagues in this house. Madam Speaker, from the onset, before devolution came into place, it was difficult for any ordinary Kenyan to actually get a national government tender. But shockingly enough, payment was guaranteed, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when we got the new constitution, 2010, and we started rolling out devolution, Madam Speaker, it became very easy for a young man and woman from Kenya to get a tender and actually do that particular tender. But it became very, very difficult for that young man and woman to be paid. Madam Speaker, governors have gone rogue. They've gone so rogue to an extent that they cherry-pick whom they want to pay. It is a situation whereby we have a case of governors playing politics with these tenders. A young man gets a tender, he approaches a lending institution, a microfinance, be it an individual in the name of Senator Eddy perhaps, since he has money from the server story, and he's unable to get payment in good time. He has loans to service. Fortunately or unfortunately, this young man gets auctioned. We have lost people. People have lost their lives because of going through depression and stress out of chasing for payments. Madam Speaker, the same issue of a delay in payments has been promoting corruption in county governments, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you cannot be paid without having to part with some small money so that your payment is guaranteed. I want to really thank Senator Mariam for this particular bill, because now we have been able to cure that mischief. For the first time, I want to really appeal to our governors and all those counties and COG that now you have no reason to delay payment for our entrepreneurs, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, devolution came to spur development. Devolution came to create millionaires out of very many hustlers out there. And these hustlers depend on county government work. It was very difficult back in the day to get government contracts, to get a government service, because you had to know someone. All the money was centralized in Nairobi. But now it's a very sad situation where you have all the money in Migori, Kwale County, Omabay County, and yet you can't secure payment unless you know someone. I also want to really thank my colleague, Senator Mariam, for introducing very punitive measures. More specifically, I think this should be Section 9, Section 10, whereby in case of a delay in that payment, that particular officer then is liable on conviction to a fine not exceeding 5 million shillings or imprisonment of a term not exceeding 5 years, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is a very, very good starting point. For the first time, we'll have our procuring officers in county governments being told to stick to the law. They must ensure that our people who have been validly been contracted, who have offered services, get value for their money, Madam Speaker. I don't want to say much. Much has been said by my colleague, Senator Cheragei, but I just want to underscore the importance of this bill, Madam Speaker, that for the first time, we are cushioning Kenyans from unnecessary delays, from unnecessary political gimmicks, such that when you didn't support this particular governor in office, you can't get your payment until you play and dance to their political rhythm, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, allow me in a very special way to recognize a few counties that have been very outstanding in processing their payments, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the county government of Kwale, it is a public knowledge. It's in the public domain that contractors in Kwale are paid in very good time. There are no issues with payments. And I want to believe those guys in Kwale County, led by our able Governor Fatuma Achani, perhaps so beyond, or rather so ahead of this bill. Now they have a legal framework to even do better. Because now if we were paying our suppliers on time and there was no legal framework around it, and now the bill has come before this house, then I can imagine what more can we do as a county government in Kwale. With those many remarks, Madam Speaker, I really commend Senator Mariam, and I wish to support this particular bill, and I hope and pray that it comes to fruition. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Ogola.
Madam Speaker, I want to congratulate Senator Mariam from the onset for this prompt payment bill. Madam Speaker, it is important that when people offer services, it is only important and ethical that they get their payment, and especially on time. Madam Speaker, if you look at the LPOs that are given to contractors and suppliers, Honorable Speaker, it is important to note that behind there are notes that state that works is only given when there are monies that the payments are available, of course, provided by the budgets in our government. But Honorable Speaker, Madam Speaker, sometimes it's unfortunate, like the speakers before me have stated, that whereas our counties were supposed to be development centers for everybody, it was supposed to give equitable growth to all. Growth to the youths, growth to the women by doing business in our counties as provided in the law. For example, Madam Speaker, it is very clear that 30% of works and supplies are supposed to be given to the youths and women to empower them so that we have an empowered society, a society that looks at their youths and a society that looks at the women. And Honorable Speaker, at the onset, all these cadres of groups were very excited that once we had a society that was thinking about everybody. But Honorable Speaker, once these works are done, we do not see the reasons why payments cannot be made in time. And Honorable Speaker, as the other speakers have said, most of our people in their growth levels, they get resources from the lending companies, from the banks, and banks expect payment. Honorable Speaker, it is an unfortunate situation that back at our counties, we've seen personalities that were thriving getting down sick, depressed, just because of the stress that have been caused by the lending companies that wants money from them. And yet, these are people who have worked for the governments. Honorable Speaker, As this prompt payment bill takes effect, it is also important that payments are done for works and supplies that are done. Honorable Speaker, I say this because there has been ghost works that have been paid in our counties. And why do I say this, Madam Speaker? We have what is called procurement by IFMIS and payments that are done. You find a situation where works have been done, the same works have been used and getting funds from the controller of budget. But Honorable Speaker, in some instances, when these monies have been released, the same is not paid out to our people. And that is why I am saying, Madam Speaker, that payments also must be done for works that are done and for supplies that have been given. Honorable Speaker, I have a very pathetic case in Homa Bay County where I come from, where transformers were procured for the county. But Honorable Speaker, you have transformers that were taken to different locations, and these transformers are not active, Honorable Speaker. We have transformers that were procured. Whoever was given this work was paid for this work, but the people of this county are not benefiting from these transformers. And that is why I say, Madam Speaker, that these payments must also be done to works and supplies that have been actually carried out. Madam Speaker, I support this bill. Every Kenyan who does some work, every Kenyan who invests must get their payment back. Honorable Speaker, because it is an investment. And Honorable Speaker, a number of these are the businesses that take care of our people. They make supplies, they do these works because it is a business and because they use the proceeds also to take care of their families. And that is why we say it is unfair that our people would give services to governments, would do works to government, and then soon after, when they have done this work, payments are not done. And Honorable Speaker, we take note of the fact that these payments are done in a way that there is certificates that are raised. And once those certificates are raised, it is important that those certificates are honored according to the agreements that are made. So, Honorable Speaker, I support the prompt payment bill, and I hope once it is enacted, it will improve the lives of our people, it will improve the lives of our people in business, it will improve the lives of our people who have given services and who have done works to the government, both in the county governments and even in the national government. I support, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I think this bill is actually a very important bill today. I know it was there in 12th Parliament, but it did not succeed. As you're aware, Madam Speaker, many Kenyans today have lost their money in investing with the government. There are many people who went to contract with the government as suppliers, contractors, and they have not received their money for the last 10 years or so. When devolution started, many Kenyans have had hopes in doing business with the government because the money has been devolved. The money was available at the grassroots level. But unfortunately, what happened is actually unforgivable. Many people who did their contractual work with the counties did not get their paid. Many of them have lost. Their businesses actually have been closed. Today we have many people who have not even taken their children to school. They have dropped out due to lack of money. Some of them were millionaires actually. People who have about 50 million, 100 million today are rendered to be pauper. They are very poor people now, and even the children are not able to go to good schools. And this is a very unfortunate thing. And then, you know, the thing is, the money is committed, agreement is signed, contractual work is done, everything is signed, but no payment is done. That same money is not that money that somebody should have been waiting, because the money has already been appropriated. That if it's going to be a construction of a hospital, a laboratory, whatever, it's already there in the budget. If it's going to be a roads construction, the money is already there in the budget. But the most unfortunate thing is that same money does not find its way to the people who did the work. The money is diverted or misappropriated. And the most unfortunate thing is that same money, the people who appropriate this money are not being prosecuted. They are not taken, they don't take liability for the work. The Auditor General goes there, writes a report, the matter goes to ESC, anti-corruption guys go there, they confirm. So some of them are just taken to the police or reported, nothing goes on. You can see high-powered people have caused this country a lot of suffering. And many countries have actually, they have done a deal with contracts. They have been taken to courts. They have been released without any judgment, without anything. They went free, and they went free with their money. Nobody pays back the money. And then this country actually today, as you are aware, billions and billions is actually outstanding and unpaid bills for those people. Like my county now, Wajir has a bendy bill of 5.5 billion shillings. And you know, the funny thing is, the money has already been budgeted for, and the money was there in the budget. So where did the money go? It has been diverted. It has been utilized for other purposes. It has been pocketed. But I think up to today, we don't have one single person who has been taken to court. Madam Speaker, I think this bill now, and I want to thank Madam Senator Mariam for bringing this timely bill. It gives us at least on a way to develop regulations. It gives us it makes an offense for anybody who makes a contractual work in the national government, in the county, that they must account for whatever they have signed for. I think that will now be able to save Kenyans. But however, we must be able to at least save the many Kenyans who are today suffering. And today, some of them have even died. Some of them have gone to depression. Others have gone crazy because of frustrations. Because somebody loses billions and millions, and they have invested with the government. The same government is not able to pay the money. And the money is already in the budget. It has been appropriated, but I don't know how they change it again. So these are criminal cases. So I think it's a high time that things must be taken serious, and this will help. The bill will help. The bill will save many Kenyans from the suffering they have undergone for the last 10 years. Madam Speaker, I think we need to be serious. If you do business with government, the government must pay the money in time. Because I think this country can only develop if we invest that money in the country. I know some of this money is taken out of the country. People invest in other places. Money is stolen and taken to other things like Dubai and all those places. So it's a very unfortunate situation. And with those few remarks, I beg to support the bill.
Senator Siengo.
Asante sana, Bi Speaker, kwa kunipa fursa hii ya kuchangia mswada ambao umeletwa na Senator Mariam, ambaye namshukuru sana kwa kuona mbali na hakika kushughulikia swala ambalo linajenga serikali za ugatuzi hata na serikali kuu. Maana, Bi Speaker, hakika tukiangalia madhara ambayo inatokana na kucheleweshwa kwa malipo kwa wale wanaofanya kazi, wafanyabiashara wadogo wadogo, wale wamekomaa, hakika kuna shida kubwa sana. Ningeomba kama hii mswada itakuwa sheria, itakuwa muhimu sana kuhakikisha kwamba watu wanaofanya kazi wanalipwa kwa wakati unaofaa na wakati unaostahili. Wengi kama vile wenzangu wamesema, ni kweli kwamba wanaomba fedha kutokana kwa mabenki, wengine kwa mashirika tofauti tofauti, na wanaposhelewesha malipo, hao wafanyabiashara huhangaika. tunajua kwamba kama ni malipo ifanyike kwa kila mfanyabiashara ama mfanyikazi ambao ametoa huduma kwa serikali kuu ama kwa serikali ung'atuzi. Hakika kama ni malipo basi isikuwe kile tunasema kama kile kitabu kinaitwa shamba la wanyama, ambao kuna wale wanalipwa na kuna wale wanawekwa wakae wangojee miaka nenda miaka rudi, mpaka wengine wanahangaika na kufa kwa ajili ya shida zinazotokana na kukosa fedha. Hakika niseme, nikitoa mfano ya kaunti ya mahali ninatoka, ninajua ndoa iliyofunjika kwa sababu mama ndiye alisema atafanya biashara ndiposa amboreshe maisha yao. Akaomba pesa kwa kikundi ambacho ukopesha pesa, akaenda akafanya biashara. Mwaka ulipopita bila kulipwa, hiyo ndoa ilikuwa, mwanaume akainuka akamwambia, basi we uliomba pesa ndiposa tuende kuwa maskini, maana vitu zetu zitachotwa, mabati ya nyumba, paa imeng'olewa, baiskeli yao ikachukuliwa, masufuria ikachukuliwa, na ikawa ni shida tupu mpaka hiyo ndoa wakaachana. Kwa hivyo ningesema kama hii sheria ambao imependekezwa, mswada umependekezwa na Senator Mariam, itakuwa sheria, itakuwa ya muhimu sana kuhakikisha kwamba malipo inafanyika haraka iwezekanavyo, watu waendelee kukua kibiashara na isikuwe ni ya wachache ambao wanapata malipo, wengine wakiachwa wakihangaika. Jambo lingine ningesema kuchangia Speaker ni kwamba hii malipo ya haraka itasaidia walio chini, ikuwe wanarika, ikuwe wamama, ndiposa wakakue pia kwa mapato ya kifedha kwa kujibidisha kufanya biashara. Lakini watu wanapohangaika, hata wale wanarika wakiamka, basi wataongopa kujiweka kwa mlingo wa kufanya biashara kwa sababu wanaona wenzao ama wale waliojaribu wakiwa wanahangaika. Kwa hivyo ningeomba niunge mkono hii mswada ya Senator Mariam na kusema kwamba ni muhimu sana. Hata itafanya kazi yetu kama maseneta wa counties tofauti tofauti kuonekana kweli kazi inafanyika na tunatetea, tunafikiria mambo ambao ni muhimu zaidi ambao inathiri maisha ya wananchi wa Kenya. Asante, ninaunga mkono.
Senator Kisang.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to say from the word go that I support the bill and thank Senator Miriam for coming up with this bill. In the last parliament, Madam Speaker, the bill was there, it went almost all the stages and eventually it lapsed. I'm happy that she has brought it back because, Madam Speaker, there are many of our people, especially the small and medium businessmen who have done businesses both at the county level and national government, and they were not paid. Some are distressed, some have died, as one of the senators has said, some are even depressed, and some have divorced, the way our colleague has said, because before you invoice, it means basically the entity would have advertised for a vacancy to supply or to do some work or to render some services. And then you bid, you go through all the tender process, you are awarded, you sign a contract, and then you do the job. After finishing, completing what you are supposed to do, you do an invoice. Then that is the time now issues arise, especially when there is a transition at the county government. The incoming governors, the new governors, most of them don't honor what the previous governors would have done. So, Madam Speaker, this bill is going to help our people. It will liberate our people to do business. Otherwise, most of the people have even given up doing business. I know of several people, especially in my county, who there's an old man who was selling petroleum products. He went into depression. And this is just one case. There are many cases. People have been sold. Banks have auctioned properties because you go to a bank because we don't have money. People don't have money. Business community don't have money to do business. You go to the bank and ask for a facility. And then shortly, the property that you put under charge is sold because the entity, the county government or the corporation or the national government department that gave you work have not honored the part of the bargain to pay. It's unfortunate, Madam Speaker. That is why this bill is timely. I'm happy especially what has been put as a fine of 1 million for the person responsible. There are those who sit on the invoices. And if they don't pay as that particular person, you can be imprisoned up to 5 years or both. Madam Speaker, this is very serious because we cannot continue exposing our people because these are people who are hardworking. They want to earn. They want to take their children to school. They want to put food on the table. But as soon as you complete what you are doing and then you are taken around in cycles, maybe some want something to be facilitated before they pay, not knowing that people have taken loans in the bank or the margins that you get is way below what you can even give out. So, Madam Speaker, I think this is something that we need to ask our colleagues. Let us support this bill. And we'll also ask our colleagues in the other house, Madam Speaker, that they also speed up to pass the bill so that this law can be signed into law, this bill can be signed into law, so that our people can at least live decently. Madam Speaker, it's very serious. I'm sure even from where you come from, your county, people are suffering. And we want to tell the governors and its executive that, you know, when previous governors exit office, you don't punish those who were given business by outgoing governors because you will face the same issue. After 5 years or 10 years, you leave office, your friends you will have given work can be exposed to the same problems that you're exposing those who got businesses from outgoing governors. It's not a crime to do work, to be given work. And by, what is it?
Senator Kisang, do you wish to be informed?
I don't have a problem. You know, this is a governor also who has exited. I don't know if these people also have issues.
Proceed, Governor
No,
Manda.
Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to inform the Senator for Elgeyo Marakwet County that governors don't give business to anybody. It is a procurement process that awards to the lowest responsive bidder. So the assumption that governors give business, Madam Speaker, is not correct. I hope Senator for Elgeyo Marakwet is informed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm informed, but you know very well, Madam Speaker, the process, the procurement, the user will create a need. If there is a need maybe to do a particular road or to do maybe an hospital or supply medicine, and then the procurement department advertises, and then now the bidders or suppliers will bid. But you see, we cannot cheat ourselves, Honorable Speaker, a former retired governor of Washingishu. You will find that most of the people who will have gotten business during your time could be very closely associated with you. I mean, even in the executive, even in the national government. So basically, we cannot run away from it. That is why your predecessors have issues in paying.
What's your point of order, Senator Mandago?
5, Madam Speaker. I don't know whether the Senator for Elgeyo Marakwet can prove that those who got business in Wasingishu County are close to me, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, business is go through a proper procurement process. Mr. Speaker, is casting aspersions on having influence tenders, which I didn't do, Madam Speaker.
Senator Kisang,
Madam,
unless you are able to substantiate which governors gave which tenders,
Madam,
please withdraw.
Madam Speaker, I withdraw for the sake of my good friend. I know he was very open. I was just saying some counties maybe not. He was an open governor. That's why he was able to get second term and also be elected as a senator. So, Madam Speaker, I just want to finalize by saying that this bill is timely. It's actually overdue because there are those who have already died, there are those who are already depressed, there are those who have been divorced because of these same issues for not being paid. So, Madam Speaker, I support, and I ask my colleagues, please let's support it and we speed it up so that it goes to the next house and it is signed into law as soon as before this session ends, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I submit and support.
Senator Mogeni.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I first want to register my appreciation and congratulations to Senator Mariam Sheikh Omar for coming up with this bill, which, if enacted, will bring smiles to so many contractors who, Madam Speaker, have been subjected to untold suffering in the hands of our county governments and the national government. Mr. Speaker, listening to the figures that we owe suppliers, you wonder whether our country can be attractive to any serious business person, Mr. Speaker. Because if my figures don't mislead me, county governments alone have pending bills close to 157 billion. Madam Speaker, who can be attracted to do business with such an entity, owing 157 billion, Madam Speaker, to people who have either supplied items to you, or they have supplied services through professionals, or they have participated in developing account by engaging in a project, either building of an ECD classroom or making up a road, and you don't pay them. It is extremely shameful, Madam Speaker, that we as a country can be such an insensitive entity. It is really a shame, Madam Speaker, and this is not the way you treat investors or entrepreneurs. This is actually killing enterprises, Madam Speaker. Because anybody, unless you are a thief, there is no way you can do business worth this amount of money without borrowing from our banks. And you know, Madam Speaker, this animal called a bank has no mercy. Banks have no mercy at all. If you don't pay, you default, they'll auction your assets. And when people are engaging with counties, they do so with an honest belief that once they do business, they will be paid, make some profit, and then they can grow their businesses. So I want to thank Senator Mariam for bringing up this bill, and I hope, Madam Speaker, our brothers in the National Assembly will see the wisdom behind this bill. I hope we will not have this shenanigan of telling us this is a money bill, therefore it cannot originate from the Senate. If you look at the content of this bill, and you are a member of Parliament, either National Assembly or Senate, you'll be out of your senses to oppose this bill, because we want to rescue businesses. Madam Speaker, anywhere in developed economies, whether you go to the US, you go to Australia, the best person to do business with, the biggest business partner is always government. But now, if you have a government that does not recognize that we need to grow businesses, then we are killing this economy, Madam Speaker. How are we going to create employment opportunities if we cannot allow businesses to grow? Madam Speaker, if you have visited countries like China, the businesses that you will see trading with Africa are actually small enterprises. But because they are able to do business with an economy that is disciplined, where your word is your bond. If you supply goods or you do a service, you will be paid promptly. And that way the business is able to grow. Madam Speaker, we are going to have a serious problem with employment unless we recognize as a country that the best way to deal with this problem of unemployment is by encouraging enterprises to grow. You know, if you give somebody business today, you pay them promptly. Tomorrow they will employ somebody to be a messenger. They will buy a vehicle, employ somebody to be a driver. They will grow and even start recruiting professionals, even engineers. And that way, we'll be able to deal with unemployment. We all think that UDA administration or any other government in office will wake up and create employment. Never. It cannot happen. It is us to create in place policies that will make it attractive to do business with government and other entities. That way you grow businesses. So I plead with members of National Assembly, once we deal with this bill and it crosses over to the other house, please let them look at the good content that is in the bill and fast track this bill so that we can save businesses. I have so many people. In Nyamira, we owe more than 1.7 billion. We owe contractors, suppliers, 1.7 billion. And Madam Speaker, these people come to our offices thinking that we will perform any magic. Yet, it's a problem that is beyond most of us. So once we enact this bill and there's a timeline within which to pay contractors, and if you don't pay, you are penalized through interest, we'll address this issue. And Senator Mandago, I'm sure Senator Chesang is not saying that governors directly award contract. You know the sweet language that is there in procurement laws. But there is what we call influence peddling by our governors. Not specifically you, but there are some governors who are good in peddling influence. They are the ones who determine who gets what contract. They determine their supporters, their friends, their associates, and those are the only people who are paid. The ones who are not associated with some governors are never paid. And then we have the problem of transition. For example, maybe the governor who took over from you will say, we will not pay anybody who did business with the Mandago regime. That's a big problem. And let's be candid and call out governors on this matter. Let them appreciate that governments have succession. You leave office, people who are there and they did business, you pay them. That's how you create faith in regimes, successive regimes. So also, let's have transparency, let us have accountability, let us have fairness on the way we award contracts and how we pay people who have done business for us. Madam Speaker, you know we have built a beautiful house called Bunge Towers. I've worked so hard as your representative in the Judicial Service, in the Parliamentary Service Commission, and set aside 51 offices for senators to move to those beautiful offices. But, Madam Speaker, we are not able to move because we are also in the thick of things. We are one of those culprits, people who owe suppliers, contractors. You can imagine. So we are losing money, allowing senators, members of National Assembly, to rent offices simply because we are not able to pay our suppliers on time. The contractors who are supposed to supply us with furniture are yet to be paid. So we can't allow senators and members of National Assembly to move to that beautiful building because we don't have furniture, Madam Speaker. And that building has been a project that has been there since 2013. But we are not able to complete it on time because we never pay our contractors on time, Madam Speaker. So this bill will address issues like what we are seeing in Bunge Towers. Because it's a shame, Madam Speaker. We promise and say members of Parliament, both houses, will occupy their offices by March. It's now passed. March comes, you go to government, you are told there is no money. Suppliers are not paid. You again leave it there, it's pending. Yeah. So I really support this bill, Madam Speaker, and hope that going forward, even before this bill is enacted, we can have discipline in our counties where we appreciate those who have done business with us. Let us have a system where first in, first payment, not the idea of the last in, first paid. That's corruption in it. And I also want to appeal to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. They are sleeping on the job. ESCC is sleeping on the job. I hope the new chair, the respected Bishop Oginde, will do things differently. Because, Madam Speaker, we need to fix the corruption cartels in our counties. There are many people, Mr. Speaker, who get contracts, Madam Speaker, who get contracts in our counties. They supply air or do nothing, but because they are connected with corruption cartels in counties, they are paid, but those who have done work, proper work, are not paid because of corruption. So I hope Bishop Oginde, fold up your sleeves, start work. We want to see, we are now into the 12th year of devolution. We have not seen even one, I'm not saying all governors are thieves, but we have not even seen even one governor who has been taken to court, tried, and convicted, so that he can send a message to others. I hope Bishop Oginde, you have a very good name, a very good CV, very good reputation. I hope you are going to deal with the corruption that is rampant in our counties. Madam Speaker, with those remarks, I support.
Senator Mandago.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this bill by Senator Mariam on prompt payments, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as my colleagues have said, it is really unfortunate that in this nation, we strive to create enterprises, encourage innovations, encourage young people, women, PWDs, Madam Speaker, even through provisions of law to engage in business. But on the other hand, Madam Speaker, we end up killing the same enterprises by failing to pay them on time, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the issue of prompt payments and making sure that services consumed by both levels of government, Madam Speaker, are timely paid is a matter that is of urgency and deserves the support of this House. Because, Madam Speaker, so many lives and livelihoods have been destroyed. Madam Speaker, there are people who have spent 10, 15 years building their enterprises. But in one business engagement with either county or national government, Madam Speaker, it has destroyed whatever they have built over time. It is therefore, Madam Speaker, appropriate that this House supports this bill by Senator Mariam to make sure that those who deliberately fail to pay suppliers of goods or services are not only reprimanded, Madam Speaker, but I think we should even recommend, Madam Speaker, that they should not even serve in public service. Because public service and public servants, Madam Speaker, have become killers of enterprises, have become reasons for diseases like blood pressure, Madam Speaker, because of failing to perform their duties while drawing salaries, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I therefore support this bill by Senator Mariam that prompt payments that are due to suppliers is not a request, but is a must that counties and national government to honor their obligation. And Madam Speaker, this bill is going to cure the habit of government overspending beyond the budget, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there are a number of counties that have become mischievous in expanding their budget, Madam Speaker, through supplementaries. And they therefore end up with pending bills without resources in the future to pay. Madam Speaker, some counties, if they are to settle pending bills today, Madam Speaker, probably the current governors might not have anything else to do other than to pay. Therefore, this bill is not only going to ensure that there is prompt payment, but it is also going to address the issue of pending bills in future. And this is going to reduce the number of pending bills. If once passed as law, Madam Speaker, it is effectively enforced. Because also in this country, Madam Speaker, you know, we have good laws, but sometimes we lack enforcement of the same laws. Madam Speaker, on the issues of delays in terms of payment, Madam Speaker, this bill is also going to address transitional issues. And Madam Speaker, so many businesses suffer during transition, both in national and county governments. There is a habit that has been formed, Madam Speaker, that after 5 years, during transition, and there is change of administration, people come to office and pretend to do audit. We are not going to pay until there is a committee of pending bill. Those committees, Madam Speaker, are not committees to assess whether the payment is due or not. Those are avenues of corruption, of people going to ask the suppliers, the contractors for money so that they are paid. Madam Speaker, this has been happening in a number of counties, and we have counties that the citizens are going to be petitioning this Senate. They have talked to us. They are willing to provide CCTVs of officers going to ask for bribes so that they can make payments for what is due. Madam Speaker, that is a habit we should not condone as a Senate, and as a House, we should support this bill so that we can cure most of those challenges that have created debts in enterprises in this country. Madam Speaker, those who delay payment sometimes make an assumption that the supplier is being paid, if a supplier is being paid 50 million, they think the supplier is going to get the 50 million. In that 50 million, Madam Speaker, there is VAT. In that 50 million, Madam Speaker, is a loan from a bank whose interests have outgrown even the profits that have been made, and some of the businesses would be running into losses. And Madam Speaker, that is why in this country, it has become extremely difficult for any business enterprise to build a serious credit worthiness in terms of doing business, because whenever they get business and there are delays in payments, there is therefore delays in servicing the loans, and it also affects their credit rating, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, these enterprises have no recourse, even after being pushed to CRB, after being pushed to uncreditworthiness in the banks, they have no recourse of claiming any form of damage from the procuring entities. And Madam Speaker, therefore, I support this bill, and I support the fact that suppliers who are not paid on time should charge interest on their dues until the time it is paid, and ensure that that procuring entity does not procure anything else, and then they clear with their bills. Madam Speaker, I therefore beg to submit and support this bill, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Senator Manzo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute on this very, very important bill. Madam Speaker, the basis has been that quite a number of Kenyans, and especially with the devolution and coming up with the new counties, really suffered when they did works for the counties, build roads, build buildings. You even heard, we dealt with a matter here, you know, whereby the county quarter, a contractor had gone to start building the county quarter, some problems cropped up, and a lot of businessmen went in with a lot of hope when the new counties came. But unfortunately, there were so many complications, and a lot of people, upon finishing the works, were actually never paid, and in a lot of cases resulted into extortion by brokers and the people pretending that they will help process the payments. In fact, I'm aware of businessmen and women who had done roads for the counties and followed up the money for so long so that they eventually gave up. I'm aware of people who did works for counties. Maybe the county has a function coming up and the contractor is told, hurry up with these, we will pay you. And after the whole matter is done, the contractor will still not be paid, and there are delays, and some of them, you know, they're taking loans from banks and then eventually loans. You know, the banks auction these contractors while they wait, and upon auctioning, some of them have gone bankrupt, and in fact some of them developed diseases, high blood pressure, having gone through a lot of stress, and a lot of them died leaving their families in poverty and in debts, and even now unable claim because of succession issues. And therefore, Madam Speaker, this is a very, very important bill. But there are a few things I want to point out as a lawyer. You know, when somebody gets judgment in court, it's very different from what this bill is trying to address. You know, there's something called Government Proceedings Act, which makes it very difficult for anybody who has a claim against the government to sue the government. And even if you sue and you get judgment, you have to go through a very long process through the Attorney General's office to be compensated. And you are totally unable to auction the government. That's one of the issues which now has been addressed in this. And even when you have judgment against county governments, for example, or you have judgments against individuals, and this bill to me seems like it is addressing governments, pendy bills, generally, because the others are contracts which people can sort out. If, for example, an institution had given a contractor a construction of certain buildings, a college, let's say, or even a university, it still fall under this category. And a lot of times, because they enjoy perpetual succession, and they are, suable bodies under the law, because they either operate under an act of parliament or they are parastatal. And therefore, it becomes very complicated. At times, these matters delay a lot in court. And then sometimes they are sent to arbitration. And then after arbitration, the court now can come even and award interests, to act, for avoidance of interest. Then somebody will be allowed, to be able to move fast. And when you liken this bill to that, this bill has tried to import that process after court judgment, where interests are accruing, to these prompt payments when you must now pay within a certain time, and failure of which then certain interest starts accruing. And it will really need a lot of discipline. And I believe during the third reading, we can amend this bill to give it more teeth. It has now teeth. It can bite, but it needs to bite more so that you push a government entity to feel fully compelled by law to pay somebody who is clear. Have worked for the government, but there is a failure to work. There's something the Honorable Mandago has addressed, and I think as a governor is very experienced. Some people also, we had very many fraudulent contractors in the counties. They will not follow the BQ. If it's a road, maybe it needs culverts, it needs maraming, it needs watering, and it needs pressing so that it can be a durable road. And then somebody will just wait just before the lanes, having colluded with some county officials, just go and grade the road, and it will be cleared as if the full BQ was followed. So in situations like that, you need institutions to come in. You need experts. You need, the ESCC to come in handy. Such a payment, then you'll have a justification to delay if there is an investigation going on, or if there is a criminal matter which has arisen out of it. And therefore, some of the governors then, if there is transition, will come and say, sorry, we can't pay this for ABCD reason. And if we are to pay, this is the real value which was covered. And then, it becomes very complicated for such a contractor to be paid. So at third reading, we need to address fraudulent contractors or situations whereby the BQ has not been followed. In the case of a construction of a building, then it means you may not even follow the building code. And there is also, laws come together to strengthen one affair. Now we have a building code which has been in existence for many years in many countries. Ours is just coming in as a regulation. And all those have to be followed so that by the time the government is making a payment, then it is making a payment for real. So once we avoid that fraudulent bit, then a contractor who has faithfully and followed the BQ and has worked for a county government or the national government, surely must not be frustrated by the government. We have a very sad case in Twakedam now, whereby there are about 5 subcontractors. And these 5 subcontractors have not, even employees have not been paid for 3 months. So the subcontractors stopped doing the subcontracts in Thwake Dam, because we did a bill here of a budget for 2023, which was amended. There was supplementary one, which now removed monies, 5 billion shillings, about 5 billion shillings, funded by African Development Bank from that particular project, and took it to other projects. And within a month or so, the project is stalled. And right now it has stopped, waiting for supplementary 2, which will be done when the National Assembly comes into back, and which, by the time it is concluded, obviously the works will have stalled and we are in breach of contract as a government. Therefore, we want a situation whereby when there are such projects, because they are, Thwake Dam is not the dam being constructed, Konza City, the same thing is happening, so that this law must also compel the government. And I have not seen that coming out very strong, to be able to honor, contracts it has with the contractors and subcontractors, and especially where there is international funding or outsourced funding, although it is subject to budget processing, then it means the government has a duty to comply with the contract. Because what happens when there is failure of compliance of a contract? It's like nobody's land, no man's land. You find that interests are accruing, the government is in breach of contract, eventually the matter may go to court, and the government will pay even almost double what originally would have So we need a situation where we need a law which compels the government to save government funding, but there not be carelessness or negligence in handling of projects. Therefore, the prompt payment is very, very important. It saves the government money, it saves time for everybody, it saves the businessmen, it helps the economy of the country, because a frustrated businessman whose bills and monies have not been paid, it means also they will not pay others and the economy will stall. But once you pay contractors promptly, they'll be able to pay the people they had employed, they'll be able to pay taxes in good time, and they'll be able to create employment. They'll solve so many problems when they are paid promptly, and they will be able to advance their businesses. But when you kill and crash almost all contractors in the country, and especially in the counties, then what are we doing to the economy of Kenya? So I believe we have to add a few things during third reading, and when we add those things in third reading, I believe this law will become better, and contractors, subcontractors will be paid promptly, and the country will save money. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Eddy.
I thank you, Madam Speaker. I do want to, first of all, note that this bill does actually not only propose on how we can have an effective legal tool to promote businesses and cure late payments in county government, but also in national government. And that means that with regards to goods, services, and works that are procured in both levels of government, there is a need to cure this issue of late payment. And I think that to that end, it is a very well-meaning bill. But sometimes these well-meaning bills can also come with some challenges that I think that in the case of this particular bill does indeed outweigh the benefit that we might have. And I say so because, number one, reason why it will be difficult for me to support this bill is because when we look at the issues like payment in counties, and we have seen this time without number, availability of funds is a very major component of how payments are done to contractors, to people who are offering services. And Madam Speaker, this availability of funds is a function of the exchequer, which goes with revenue collections. We know that even as we speak right now, Madam Speaker,
we have struggled as a house, and I sit in budget and finance. I also sit in CPIC, where we try to hold the treasury, the national treasury, accountable as much as we can. And sometimes you find pressures that are indeed impossible to deal with, where the national treasury has had serious exchequer demands, yet they have not received serious exchequer receipts, to the extent that balancing that out becomes a very difficult sense. So for instance, right now, we do know that counties do have money that has not been given to counties since March, April, May, and we are going to the next year. In such a case, availability of fund is a problem. So then if you put a punitive bill on people who do not have control of this, it becomes a problem. Secondly, Madam Speaker, this bill proposes interest rates to be increased on pending bills. For these suppliers. You see, for every action, there is a reaction. When you impose something like interest rates on bills that have not been paid, you actually also increase bills for that particular government entity or procurement entity. So for instance, if a particular entity owes a particular service provider X, and then you impose that interest rate on them for that late payment, which sometimes is out of their control for reasons that I've explained, like availability of funds, then it means that that particular interest becomes another pending bill. And that is something that we must seriously consider. And the moment you've also brought about expansive levels of interest in things like pending payments, the bill ought to have actually thought about how do you fund that interest, one. And number two, the bill should also have thought about how then do you report on that interest? Because when you look at how interests are done, definitely you'll want the same accounting officers that you're trying to keep or hold accountable at the end of every financial year to do a different report on the interest rates. Do they do this report to CBK, or do they do this report to National Treasury? This makes it problematic. And further, if you were to be more adventurous in strict financial terms, you will also go and look at, do you want these interests to be compounded, or are they going to be simple interest? And then, Madam Speaker, then things just becomes complicated when you think about expanding that interest issue. So that makes it very difficult for me to support the bill. And Madam Speaker, additionally, if you're going to impose something like interest on payments that counties or even national government is not doing because of other issues like delay of funds, then it goes without saying that you must put an equal equation to the other side, whereby if there is an accelerated payment to a particular service provider, then does it mean that that service provider then has to discount the county or the national entity? That must be considered in the interest of including the kind of interest that are proposed by this bill. Madam Speaker, I also think that proposed penalties under offenses in the clause, I think 7 by the bill to the accounting officers is a little bit exorbitant, Madam Speaker. And this is because of the reason that I said. If the exchequer does not guarantee that there will be availability of funds, then it goes without saying that any accounting officer also will not have control on the availability of that fund. So then how do you account for that lack of control of a procurement entity where the officer does not have control on that availability? Then you punish them based on timelines and not based on availability of funds. That becomes extremely problematic. And we have seen it even if you look at the County Government Act, whereby both the PFM and the County Government Act in the level of counties does establish what we call the county treasury. And in the county treasury, the head of that treasury is actually supposed to be the CEC finance. But when you look at our IFMIS system, Madam Speaker, Today, you will find that the IFMIS system, the way it is coded at the controller of budgets, we have somebody called approver 2, approver 1, and people approve in different levels. And it's not strictly exposed to the adherence of who then the accounting officer becomes there. So in a place where you have punished an accounting officer with a bill of 5 million or 5 years jail term, where it was completely out of their control, how then do you account for that kind of officer? Madam Speaker, I also think that it is critical that before, as a Senate, we think about passing this bill, we need to look at the progression between this bill and the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act of 2015, which was actually ratified and approved by this Parliament in 2020. Because I find a lot of what has been proposed by this bill as having been taken care of by the PPAD Act of 2015. And I just wanted to help Senator Mariam in looking at some of the classes that have come here. And I think that they're the most substantive classes. I didn't pick all of them, but the most substantive ones. So if you look at section 4 of this, on the prompt payment of accounts, the timelines within which payments have to be made to contractors is set at 60 days. And the period starts from the day of the receipt of the invoice. That's what this is proposing. Further, goods must be properly certified before payment. But this is actually addressed by Regulation 150 of the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act of 2020, exactly the same way. If you look at Section 5 of what is proposed here on priority of payment, this is also provided for in Regulation 139(1) and 6 of the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Regulations 2020. If you also go to Section 7, which I had also referred to, on interest rates that I've actually really spent time talking about, if you look at Section 140 of Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act, it provides the same, but with a more scientific method on how do you deal with the questions of reporting, how do you deal with the question of computation, how do you deal with the questions of funding those interests. So it's already actually provided for. If you look at Section 9 of on offenses, which is what I think is becoming a motive from the House, because people are talking from the perspective of paying different service providers from an emotive perspective. Section 9 is actually a replica of Section 176A(c) of Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act, which actually provides for penalty for delay in payment beyond contractual period. And Madam Speaker, this bill is also very innovative around looking at the invoicing system, which I think is a very good idea, as captured in Section 6 on the return on invoice. But this one could also be well addressed under the contractual agreement between the supplier and the procurement entity under dispute mechanism that's already provided for under Public Procurement Assets and Disposal Act. And Madam Speaker, lastly, my attention was drawn to Section 8 on fair dealing, which I think is a valid issue. But on this fair dealing, actually, if you look at the Public Procurement Act, there's a proposal that this should actually there's not a proposal but a regulation that that contract should be provided on the contract obligations of each party, so that each party is held accountable. While it is a motive that these different service providers must be paid for their services, it is equally important that you equally hold them accountable. Which brings me to another point here, Madam Speaker, on why I think that the bill will have been more prolific if you had done segmentation of which kind of service providers are you talking about. Because a big contractor who is doing roads in our counties or who is working on SGR, for instance, does not need to be protected to the extent that they are paid 30 days. But if you're talking about SMEs or micro enterprises that you segmented on this particular bill, then you make it possible to have a conversation that is more segmented and more targeted in helping the businesses that are more at risk. And that way, then even the idea of bottom-up agenda is actually well taken care of. Madam Speaker, I also think that the bill, for it to have been more prolific, and perhaps this could be an amendment that I could propose, is if you had looked at the scope of the bill with regards to where is the bulk of the spending in government. Today we know, Madam Speaker, that in national government, about 63% of the spending goes to cost on the current budget that is mostly employees. And when you look at it from that perspective, when you go to counties, we also have about 70% of money that is spent in counties is about employees. What does this mean? This means that when you look at things like deductions, whereby you want to look at pension deductions or any other deductions that are due, and the bulk of pending bills that you're seeing in counties is actually employee deductions. For instance, we know that our LAP Trust as well as county pension fund are owed by counties up to 50 billion, Madam Speaker. If you cannot be able to address that with this kind of bill, because that's also a payment ticket. That is why we need to look at the scope of how do you expand this. Then the bill loses meaning, because then you will have more interest put on a small section of total spending of government vis-a-vis where you should actually be targeting, and where we are having more interest that are accrued outwards. Outwards here I mean, if we have got a pending bill like KRA deductions, and KRA is getting that money from counties in terms of fines and interest, and that is what we should be able to curb, because counties will pay for them later, as well as national government. That scope.
Order Senator Tobiko and Senator Seki.
That scope is what I would have really wanted to see in this bill dealt with. And lastly, Madam Speaker, I think that because it's a bill that looks entirely on general payments, I think that there is a concept of exemption whereby some spending can be spending on operations and contingencies that you do not have control over. So for instance, right now, Madam Speaker, if you look at the crisis in the northern part of Kenya, where there's serious military spending that can sometimes require some immediate military procurement that has to be done, or even the Shakahola monies that I just came from in Kilifi, where you need a serious intervention and a serious spending right there, and sometimes contractual drawings of those natures might take a whole different turn based on emergency basis. How then do you punish accounting officers based on blatant reasoning around timelines and pure delays of funds? So if these are the issues that could have been captured in the bill, I think that it then would have been a more holistic bill. But in the current format, I think that we run the danger of a serious replication of the PPAD Act of 2015, approved in 2020, and therefore, Madam Speaker, I oppose this bill, not out of any utter disrespect for the kind of intellect and work that my sister Senator Mariam has put into this bill, but purely because some of these proposals have got overreaching effect in terms of how effective and how efficient our counties can be in terms of managing this kind of procurement processes. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Sam Nyamu, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to start by congratulating Senator Mariam for taking up this issue that has been a real thorn in the flesh in our country for contractors and entrepreneurs. I cannot say it is timely. I will say it is long overdue. My experience, Madam Speaker, from the county of Nairobi, where we have over 60 billion pending bills spanning from a period of over 10 years, the issue of pending bills is big business in Nairobi. It has been a thriving field for cartels in Nairobi, where they peddle influence. And if you know the governor, then your payment is given priority. Madam Speaker, this is a very unfortunate situation because as government, we procure services that go to our people, and then the people who did the work end up suffering and even facing death, paying the ultimate price for it. Madam Speaker, I think this bill is going to cure the challenges of government entities procuring services and works that are not budgeted for. Some of the issues that Senator Eddy has brought up are definitely an eye-opener, but I think this just means that the bill needs more work. I think it should not be through. The intent of the bill is what we should work with. If we need some amendments, if we need to work on it, but there is dire need for regulation of our pending bills and prompt payments in our counties and also in the national government, Madam Speaker. And with that, I support.
Senator Shakila.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika. Mimi nasimama kuunga mkono hii mswada wa Mheshimiwa Mariam, Senator Mariam, kwa naunga ukiwa na mabadiliko as in amendment. I support with amendments. Mheshimiwa Spika, mambo ya kusema watu kucheleweshwa malipo yao ni shida ambayo imekabili hii nchi kwa nyanja za kuanzia serikali kuu mpaka serikali za county. Na ni jambo kuna muhimu itungiwe sheria ambayo itakuja kutekelezwa na itakuwa ni sheria ambayo itakuwa ni kama funzo na kuweza kufanya serikali ziwajibike kikamilifu. Kwanza ningependa kusema mradi wowote ambao utakuwa umefanywa ama unatekelezwa ni mradi ambao huwa umefanywa bajeti yake, umebajetiwa. Na mradi ukiwa bajetiwa huwa tayari kuna pesa kwa huo mradi. Kwa hivyo hakuna sababu yoyote ya mradi kama ule kukosa kulipwa ama yule mtekelezaji wa hiyo mradi akose kulipwa haki yake kwa ukosefu wa fedha. Ni lazima mtu akipeana huduma kwa county ama kwa serikali awe atapewa malipo yake kwa muda unaotarajiwa, na kama hatapewa malipo yake basi kuna hatua ni muhimu zichukuliwe. Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna njia ambazo kwamba zinaweza wekwa katika huu mswada ziweze kuzuia matatizo kama hayo. Kwa mfano nikisema tuseme kama mwenzangu mheshimiwa ameongea juu ya kwamba ya faida, kwamba pesa ikicheleweshwa imewekwa faida. Kitu kama faida tunaweza kutoa kwa huu mswada na tuseme kwamba pesa ilipwe vile vile bila faida. Hiyo ni kitu inaweza fanywa amendment. Kitu chengine mheshimiwa ni kwamba ni lazima mtu akipeana huduma awe atalipwa pesa yake kwa wakati unaofaa. Hakuna haki ya kucheleweshwa, na wale wahusika, kwa mfano kama ni upande wa county, ni governor ametoka yule ameingia mwingine, kuwe na mipangilio kamili ya kufanya, kutakuwa na handover, proper handover ya kusema kwamba haya ndio mambo ambayo yamebakishwa yako nyuma, na hizi ndizo kazi ambazo kwamba ninakukabidhi uwe utaendelea nazo katika shughuli zako za miaka 5, ili kuonekane kwamba hakutakuwa na shida yule governor ambaye ameingia aseme kwamba mimi haya siyajui, haya nihusu. Na hiyo ambao kwamba sengine utakuta miradi imeachwa katikati na miradi ile imelipiwa pesa nyingi na ile ni pesa ya mlipa kodi, na yule governor ameingia huwa hataki kushughulika kulipa ile pesa, na pengine ni kitu ambacho kwamba ni cha muhimu, ni huduma ambayo kwamba wananchi wanataka, ni huduma wananchi wameitisha, lakini utakuta wale viongozi ambao wameingia mamlakani wanakataa kutekeleza yale majukumu kwa sababu ya kukataa kufanya yale malipo. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi naona huu ni mswada wa maana sana. Unafaa tu upigwe msasa. Ukishapigwa msasa kikamilifu kutokana na maoni ya maseneta ama waheshimiwa, na hakika huu mswada utafanya kazi yake mzuri, na pia utapunguza zile shida na yale majukumu ambayo kwamba yanaachiwa wale wenzao ambao kwamba wanaenda wakiachia wale wanaoingia na kadhalika. Kwa hivyo la muhimu ninaloona mimi Mheshimiwa, mswada huu unafaa upigiwe msasa alafu tuupitishe kama Senate. Asante Mheshimiwa Speaker.
Senator Tobiko.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the intent of this bill is good. Madam Speaker, we have experienced across the country, at both levels of government, the national government, the county governments, Madam Speaker, a lot of contractors and suppliers of goods and services have suffered immeasurable, consequences because of delayed payments, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I therefore rise to support this bill with amendments, Madam Speaker, because if we talk about interest on delayed payments, Madam Speaker, it may become a challenge. It may, become untenable. But, Madam Speaker, the general intent of this bill is good, and will also bring discipline to, the contracting agencies, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, with the changes in governments at the county levels, very different governments coming in even after 5 years, we have seen contractors and suppliers who have been, whose payments have been delayed. Others have never been paid. People have suffered with bank loans. They have suffered the collateral damage. People's properties have been auctioned by the banks, Madam Speaker, because people take loans in order to be able to supply, in order to be able to deliver these goods and services, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have actually seen Kenyans who have suffered to an extent of even, getting sick. Others have lost their lives in other situations, Madam Speaker, because of depression. Family properties have been put into jeopardy, Madam Speaker, because of delayed payments, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, what I see this bill curing is, it will bring discipline into the whole supply chain, Madam Speaker, that we become disciplined. We should have good intentions when you advertise for goods and services. Then you should also be ready to pay, Madam Speaker, especially because, as the Senator Shakila has said, these are already things that are in the budget. These are things that have been budgeted for. And counties, the various levels of government, it's not only counties, must always advertise for what they can pay, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have also seen, county governments that, or governors who have left a lot of debts, pending bills for the next government to come in, Madam Speaker. And so it is sort of collapses services at the county levels, because the first thing a governor addresses when they come in is to try and sort out pending bills. Madam Speaker, we must also insist on payments that can only be done after verification, due verification that these services were delivered, that these goods were delivered. Madam Speaker, because we have in this country where corruption has taken root at all levels of government, Madam Speaker, people have supplied nothing and they come and demand payment, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, it is important that audits are done, that forensic audits are done, make sure that the goods have been delivered, services have been delivered and payment should be done, Madam Speaker. And so I do agree with the members who have spoken earlier that whereas the intention of the bill is very good and will bring discipline into the whole area of procurement, Madam Speaker, we may not necessarily insist on interests because also we have seen counties that have not necessarily delayed payments, not of their own making, but because of delays of allocations from Treasury, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I do support, Madam Speaker, we have seen also situations that I think this bill should address, situations whereby we have encouraged our young people to go into business with governments at both levels, national and counties, and also the women and disabled people, but in the process, they get themselves into a quagmire which they don't understand, where a field where there are cartels, a field where nobody even respects the portion or the 30% that was meant for the youth and meant for the disabled people and for the women, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, for our young people to be able to prosper in this field, we must bring discipline into this field. For women to be able to do business with government, Madam Speaker, this field has to be streamlined. And it can only be streamlined if there are prompt payments, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, I support because it is very important. It is very important that government becomes disciplined. It is very important that goods are paid for. It's very important, Madam Speaker, that we become disciplined in all fields, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have visited other countries, and we have seen the kind of, and even private entities in this country, Madam Speaker, do pay on delivery. Madam Speaker, we have seen private entities, private enterprises are prompt in their kind of dealings with the public or with their suppliers, Madam Speaker. Discipline must also be brought into the public service in terms of procurement, Madam Speaker, and I think this law is meant to do exactly that with a few amendments, Madam Speaker. It's a very good law, Madam Speaker, which we need to support. Thank you very much.
I think there's no other contributor. I now call upon the mover to reply.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Madam Speaker, I thank senators who contributed to this bill. There are 13 in number. I thank Cherargei, Senator Chemera, Senator Beatrice, Senator Abbas, Senator Beth Sengo, Senator Kisan, Senator Omegeni, Senator Mandago, Senator Manzo, Senator Eddy, Senator Karen Nyamu, Senator Shakila, and Senator Tobiko. Thank you very much for that. Madam Speaker, this bill, prompt bill, is just Kenyans are behind. In other continents, like Canada and other parts of the world, they have this bill, which is enacting. Madam Speaker, this bill, it has, it will solve so many problems, like our business economy, because if you engage individual to the county business or national government, if you do business with them, after the business done, supposed to be paid immediately. But because of that, it leads to so many issues which has been highlighted by our senators. It end up in auctioning of resources, properties, which will lead to depressions, mental health, and most of the people who engage in this who engage in the business with county or national, most of them are paralyzed because of depression and mentally. Madam Speaker, it also led to, as senators also raised, family break-in, that is divorce and some. Madam Speaker, as Senator Eddie quoted some section of the bill, which is saying it's duplications. Madam Speaker, those are regulations. And regulations, the bill supersedes the regulations. If it is there in as a regulations, it's not. It is not enacted because of it is regulations, but if it is a bill, people will be disciplined on payments of the payment of bills in prompt payment. Madam Speaker, because if it is now regulations, most of them expires with time. Madam Speaker, with that, the bill is supposed to be passed so that our bottom-up citizens who are in small businesses, SMEs, can have circulation of money immediately, because if you receive money immediately, can be cheaper in another businesses to increase our economy. Madam Speaker, when it comes to interest rates, if the way Eddie is proposing to remove, if we do that, people will not be punctual to pay bills. But if there is some pinching somewhere, there must be action to be taken. Madam Speaker, when it comes to delay on fund by treasuries, as Madam Speaker, when it comes to payment bill, pending bill, most of them is deliberately done, not by delay of payment, delay of fund from treasury. So to avoid that deliberations, we need at least some action so that those deliberation actions is seized. Madam Speaker, this bill will solve so many things on economy. It will save economy, and some also senators raise on transition issues, because a governor come in and will say, this is not my payment, it's another, I will not do that one, and let me pay my bill first. Madam Speaker, we have to work FIFO method. That is first come, first serve. It's not a matter of who is in the office and who is not in the office. Madam Speaker, to that, we need to be the same level with other continents, other developing countries. So, Madam Speaker, on that, I reply the bill. I reply the bill, Madam Speaker. I request that pursuant to Standing Order 66.3, you defer putting of the question to the later date. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
It is deferred to tomorrow. The putting of the question is deferred to tomorrow. Next order.
Order number 11, the Learners with Disabilities Bill, Senate Bill number 4 of 2023, second reading.
Senator Kamar is not around. Can that be deferred? Next order.
Order number 12, the Employment Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 11 of 2022, second reading.
That's Senator Cherarke, not present, deferred.
Order number 13, the Agricultural and Livestock Extension Services Bill, Senate Bills number 12 of 2022, second reading.
That's by Senator Mutinda, not present, deferred.
Order
Next
number
order.
14, the Mung Bills Bill, Senate Bills number 13 of 2022, second reading.
That's Senator Wambua, not present, deferred. Next order.
Order number 15, the Startup Bill, Senate Bills number 14 of 2022, second reading.
Senator Crystal Asige, not present, deferred. Next order.
Order number 16, the Tea Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 1 of 2023, second reading.
Senator Hilary Sigay, not present, deferred. Next order.
Order number 18, motion adoption of the report of the Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations on a statement sought on the relocation of National Government Administrative Services from Chuka Town to Katwana County Headquarters in Tharaka Nithi County.
Not order number 17? Sorry.
Sorry, so order number 17, the Konza Technopolis Bill, Senate Bills number 2 of 2023, second reading.
Senator Gloria Uruoba, not present, deferred. Next order.
Order number 18, motion adoption of the report of the Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations on a statement sought on the relocation of a National Government Administrative Services from Chuka Town to Katwana County Headquarters in Tharaka Nithi County.
Senator Methu, not present, deferred.
Order number 19, motion compensation to Kenyan victims of the 1998 bombing of the United States Embassy in Nairobi.
Senator Mudhama, not present, deferred. Honorable Senators, there being no other business on the order paper, the Senate stands adjourned until tomorrow, Wednesday, 24th May 2023 at 9:30 a.m.